If you want to get into racing games and improve your sim racing skills, don't go anywhere. This is the place to be. Zero prior knowledge required, zero judgment from us, just a full, comprehensive, no stone unturned, step-by-step guide. By the end of this video, maybe you'll be winning races as well. Last year, we released the first part of our ultimate beginner's guide to sim racing. Many of you were looking forward to embarking on a brand new journey within this magical discipline, but sadly in November of the same year, Traxion was shut down. But basically, the important news and the short story is, we are well and truly back, so that means reviving the ultimate beginner's guide series. That previous video featuring the wonderful Piers Pryor was all about getting set up and what equipment you might need to get started. I'm going to share a link to that very video in the description below, as it's still worth a watch first. In terms of equipment or plug-in controls, we recommend using whatever's available to you, be it a controller or even a mouse and keyboard. If you have a force feedback wheel and pedal set, perfect, but if not, the basic principles of track driving can still be learnt using other devices. Heck, I even managed a lap of the Nordschleife with a dance mat. Sort of. So if you do want to stick to a controller, or a dance mat, this series is still going to be useful for you. Ultimately, of course, you will get the most satisfaction and realism out of your sim racing journey by using a force feedback wheel set, so that is what I'm going to be sticking to throughout this series. Now sadly, in this video, we're not going to help you set up your steering wheel on your chosen game because, frankly, there are far too many variables in terms of different steering wheels and, of course, different games. Just make sure before you get started that your steering wheel is actually compatible with the game you're going to use it on. If you are having trouble, try searching through related forums or Discord servers for troubleshooting advice. YouTube is also a wonderful place if you're looking for support on any specific game or product, so bear that in mind. If you want to follow along with us throughout this video, we are going to be using the original Assetto Corsa game, as it's available on pretty much every platform that's relevant here, and also it combines great handling with a very versatile content list and a cheap price tag. Plus, at the time of recording, Assetto Corsa Evo, which is essentially Assetto Corsa 2, isn't available to play yet. The game Race Room Racing Experience is another great place to start, as it's free to play with some baseline content. Other versatile hardcore sims like iRacing and rFactor 2 are arguably the best for realism and will work well, but are perhaps less compromising when learning the ropes. Automobilista 2, or AMS2 as it's known, is another decent option, and then you have Gran Turismo 7 and Forza Motorsport, which are forgiving yet realistic enough to learn on, but lie somewhere between sim and arcade. Now in terms of peripherals, I'm currently using some magnificent SimuCube products, but you do not need this to get started. This is very much a destination brand with expensive, fantastic quality products. You can, however, find an entry-level budget force feedback wheel from the likes of Thrustmaster, Logitech, Moza, and they will be more than enough to get you started. You will definitely be able to extract your potential from those wheels as well. Think of it this way, you can still learn how to play the piano using an electric keyboard, so eventually once you get more experienced, you can upgrade as you see fit. So, boot up your sim of choice, and now let's select a relatively slow car on a short and simple track. We're going to be driving the Toyota GT86 at Silverstone National, as the car is very easy to handle and is available on a lot of sims, plus it's rear-wheel drive, but more on that later. Another good rear-wheel drive starter car option on many sims is a Mazda MX-5. Now we could also use that on Assetto Corsa, in fact it might be just as good if not better than Toyota, but you do need to have the Japanese DLC pack. Silverstone National is a great place to start as well because there are only 6 corners, so it's quite short, but all of these corners have different characteristics and give us a chance to demonstrate a few different techniques. But honestly, whatever track you want to do will be fine, just try and pick something fairly easy to learn. After selecting your combo, you'll want to choose a game mode that puts only yourself on track without a time limit. This is called Practice on Assetto Corsa, but it could also be under Warm-Up, Track Day, or Test Drive, depending on your sim of choice. The next thing to look for is your driving assists, and early on we're going to keep most of these switched on. There are a couple of things to look out for, however. If your chosen sim has a steering assist or braking assist that do the driving for you, you're going to want to switch those off. Just make sure the important ones like automatic gearbox and automatic clutch, anti-lock brakes and traction control are turned on. In some games, you will also need to turn on automatic engine start and automatic ignition. And the final thing we're going to look at here is stability control. Now, stability control is essentially like stabilizers. It will help you stay on the road, avoid spins, stuff like that, but they won't drive the car for you. Now, if you're brand new to sim racing, I'd recommend turning on your stability control to however high a level you see fit. But if you've got a little bit of driving knowledge or experience, maybe try keeping that off at first. And then if you're struggling, you can always turn it on later. Think of these assists like a safety net. They won't massively transform the driving experience, but they will help you should you begin to make a mistake or go wrong. They'll keep you in line, keep you on the circuit. You're also going to want to, by the way, turn off mechanical damage because we don't want to be resetting to the pits every time you do make a mistake. Now, without wishing to sound patronising, here is a basic rundown of what each pedal does. The pedal on the right is going to be your accelerator or throttle, and this is what makes the vehicle speed up and go faster. The pedal in the middle, if it's a 3-pedal setup, or the left, if it's just a 2-pedal setup, is the brake, which slows the car down by applying friction to all 4 wheels. If you're using a controller, the same applies to the triggers, so right trigger for the accelerator and left trigger for the brake. If you do have a 3-pedal set, the left pedal is going to be your clutch, just like in a road car, but we're using automatic gears today, we're just learning the ropes, so we're not really going to be needing the clutch at all, and in fact, many sim racing pedal sets only have 2 pedals anyway. When it comes to braking, you can either use your left foot or your right foot to apply pressure onto the pedal, but it's mainly down to personal preference and the style of car. Road cars and other cars with clutches generally suit right foot braking, which you will be familiar with if you drive on the road. But high performance racing cars that don't require the clutch on downshifts, like F1 cars for instance, will either require or suit left foot braking for quicker application. An important thing to note at this point is that different cars have different drivetrain layouts. Now what this means is that the engine will power different wheels depending on the car. There are 3 common drivetrain layouts: rear wheel drive, front wheel drive, and 4-wheel drive. The most common layout for racing cars is rear wheel drive, meaning the engine sends power to the rear wheels only, while the front wheels do the steering. This is generally what F1 and GT cars have, as well as many sport and performance cars. Then we have front wheel drive cars, like the majority of touring cars and low-powered road cars and hatchbacks. Finally, 4-wheel drive cars send power from the engine to all 4 wheels, and this is the most common layout for rally cars and off-roaders, as it gives you more traction on lower grip surfaces. Why does all of this matter? Well, it affects how the car actually behaves at speed, and therefore how you have to drive the car, but we'll come on to the specifics of this later on when it becomes more important. Just know for now that the Toyota GT86 that I'm driving, and also the Mazda MX-5 I suggested earlier, are rear-wheel drive. Okay, we're finally ready to hit the circuit, but just before I roll out of the pit lane, I'm going to tell you about the sponsor of this series and today's video, trophi.ai. Trophi.ai is a sim racing coaching tool powered by AI. Using it really does feel like you have one of the best racing drivers in the world sat right next to you, telling you exactly what you need to do and tailoring the feedback to your specific driving needs. Regardless of your ability level, Trophi AI will adapt to your needs and ultimately lead to faster lap times and a greater knowledge of how to go faster in future. It will certainly become a useful tool a little bit further down the line in your sim racing journey, and we will be utilising this as well in future episodes. If you want to find out more, head to the website www.trophi.ai. You can find out more information and the link in the description below. Okay then, so let's talk about the basics of car control. We'll get out on circuit for the first time. I'm going to click the little steering wheel. We're going to press down lightly on the throttle. And away we go. So, obviously we have the pedals as we discussed. We have our throttle pedal on the right and our brake pedal on the left. And we also have the steering wheel. Now, we're not worried about any of the fancy buttons that we may or may not have on our force feedback wheels right now. We're just worried about the basic inputs. So obviously as I steer the car left or right, it turns the front wheels and that rotates the car, and that's how we're going to get around the circuit. Now if you're playing a sim like Assetto Corsa or iRacing or something, you actually want to try and get your steering wheel in real life, the one you're actually using, to match the rotation of the steering wheel in the game. So as you turn it a certain amount of degrees, the steering wheel in the game should look about the same. That'll make the car feel more realistic, it'll make the game perform slightly better, but not all of the hardcore sims do this, or the non-hardcore sims I should say, don't necessarily line up perfectly. So just look into it online if you're unsure. So the first thing we want to do here is simply familiarise ourselves with the controls, get used to how the car feels. So we're going to drive around the track nice and slowly, really slowly, and we're just going to look out for things. So we've got the white line on the left hand side and we've got the white line on the right hand side. Those define the racing circuit. So we want to stay in between those white lines pretty much at all times. Now, as we begin to drive around here, you're just going to be looking for things like, what way the track goes. Is there a left-hander? Is there a right-hander? Does it look like a sharp corner? Or does it look like an open corner? And then each lap we complete, as long as we're staying within the white lines, everything's under control, we're just going to slowly increase the speed and use a little bit more gas, a little bit less of the brake, until we're comfortable. So the basic technique for cornering is as follows. When you head into a corner, before you get there, you want to try and brake in a straight line to slow the car down. Then when you reach the corner, you want to steer using, of course, the steering wheel. And then as you come towards the end of the corner and you see the exit, you want to get back on that throttle pedal to drive out of the corner. Very simple. Brake, steer, accelerate. A lot of people, when they first get started, think that they have to brake during the corner or in the corner, but that's not actually the best technique for getting around a racetrack. You need to do your braking before you get there to slow down to the correct speed as the corner starts, and then you turn in and work from there. So again, gonna get on the brake pedal to slow the car down, and we turn the steering wheel as we see the corner, sticking to the inside line, and then as we come towards the end of the corner, I'm gonna get back on the accelerator pedal, and through we go. Now, as you continue to build the muscle memory of this, build the technique, build your speed, you are going to start to notice more things happening with the steering wheel, with the force feedback. You'll feel a little bit of resistance when you're cornering, you'll probably feel bumps of road surfaces. If I drive on a curb like this, I get a vibration and a rattle through my steering wheel. That's what force feedback is all about. It's giving you information from the game. You should be able to feel this. Now, if you don't feel anything at all, but you are using a force feedback steering wheel, you're probably going to need to check your settings, make sure everything's working. Equally, if you feel too much, if it's too strong, it feels like the steering wheel's been ripped out of your hand, you don't want that either. So you need to go and adjust your force feedback settings. I'm going to show you how to do that real quick on Assetto Corsa. So whilst I'm still on circuit, I'm going to scroll over to the right hand side of the screen, and there should be an option here. This may look a bit different for you depending on which version of Assetto Corsa you're using, but I have a button here saying Force Feedback Controller, and when I click that, I can actually change the overall FFB or force feedback level. You don't want to worry about all these fancy settings, but you can see here it's 80%. I can hit plus or minus on that top bar to change the strength of my force feedback. I think 75 is probably about right for now. Depending on your sim of choice, you can do that in a different way, but also you can do it in the software for your chosen steering wheel. So if you're using a Logitech, for example, you can turn down your force feedback or turn up your force feedback in the Logitech software that you would have installed when you first got the wheel working. We're going to hit save, we're going to get rid of that screen, and get back to driving. So at this point, we've done a few laps. We're gradually continuing to build our speed. We're going a little bit faster through the corners, and eventually you are going to hit a point where you go into a corner a little bit too quickly. So I'm coming into this first corner. It's quite a fast right-hander. I'm going to brake a little bit, and then I'm going to turn the car. And hang on a minute. The tires are squealing. I'm going way off the circuit, and I've crossed over the white line. I've gone off the track. Congratulations, you just witnessed understeer. Now, what is understeer? Understeer is one of the most frustrating things you can experience as a racing driver, because essentially you're turning the car but you're carrying too much speed, you're going too fast, and the car will not rotate in the way that you want it to. So once again, I'm braking, not maybe enough, maybe a little bit late. I'm turning the car, and look, I'm not making the corner. The car is not rotating anywhere near as much as I am asking it to with the steering wheel. Now, the opposite from understeer is something called oversteer. And instead of the car not rotating enough, oversteer is when the car actually rotates too much. So if I'm heading through this left-right section here, I'm going to be a bit aggressive with the car. I'm on the brakes, I'm turning it, and then I'm sharply turning it. And as you see there, whoa! The car slid. And the rear of the car started rotating more than the front. That is oversteer. It's actually quite difficult to reduce with these settings, because obviously right now I'm running with assists on, things like traction control, and the game will basically do what it can to try and stop you from losing the car if you do suffer from oversteer. But the basic principles remain. Understeer is when the front tyres run out of grip. Essentially you try and go too fast in the front tyres and push them too hard, and they slide wide. Oversteer is when the rear tyres run out of grip. So the front's not got a problem gripping to where it needs to be, but the rear tyres run out of grip and they slide, and obviously that's how you then get that over rotation. Now, the way to try and help things when you suffer from understeer is to go a little bit slower. If it's in the middle of the corner, say you go in a bit too fast, There's not too much you can do other than lifting off the throttle and making sure that you slow down before getting back on the throttle to avoid going all the way off the circuit. However, sometimes it's too late, you're carrying too much speed, you can't do anything about it, you just need to brake earlier or harder next time. Oversteer is a little more complicated because it's very difficult to describe how to catch oversteer. You just need to feel it with your two hands, and that is only going to come about from gaining experience. The more laps you do, the more times you experience the car sliding and being able to catch a slide, the better you're going to get at it. This is where the force feedback really comes in handy as well, because you can feel exactly what the car is doing underneath you, and although that might be a bit weird at first, eventually you're going to be able to catch slides without even having to think about it. Now, as a racing driver, what we're constantly aiming to do is find that perfect sweet spot between understeer and oversteer. We don't want the front or rear tyres to be overloaded or underloaded. We want all four tyres to share a bit of the load and give us as much grip as possible, as often as possible. And no matter how good you are at driving, no matter how many years of experience you have, even the top professional drivers are always striving to find that sweet spot every corner of every single lap. And it's not easy. All I can say is the best way to improve your driving on this front is just to practice over and over again. Now, remember earlier on when I said that most racing cars are rear-wheel drive? Let's find out why that's the case with a little experiment. I've pulled up on the pit straight here at Silverstone and I'm going to do a little straight line test. So what we're going to do is accelerate from a standing start up to around about 60 miles an hour, then I'm going to slam on the brakes. You can hear and feel all the vibrations there coming through the force feedback. We've come to a stop as quickly and efficiently as possible. But now if we check the replay, we're going to see something interesting. So as we see the car side on, keep an eye on the front and back of the car. So as we accelerate there, the front of the car actually lifts. The nose goes up in the air. Now watch the front of the car as we brake here. Hard on the brakes and you actually see the front of the car dive down towards the ground. What you're witnessing there is weight distribution. Cars are of course quite heavy machines. That's a lot of weight to be shifted around when you're driving quickly around the circuit. Now each of the four corners has suspension which allows the car to pitch, roll and move around, and that actually changes the positioning of the weight. So as you accelerate away in a straight line, the weight goes towards the rear of the car and that lifts the front of the car up. That's just physics. Then when you hit the brake pedal hard, the weight swaps ends, so the weight goes to the front of the car and the rear of the car lifts. Now this weight transfer doesn't just affect the look of the car and the general feel, it also affects the performance of the car, because of course you have four tyres touching the road, and as the weight moves around, the grip levels change. Think of it this way, if I'm gripping my wrist with my hand, the harder I grip, the firmer I hold this, aka the more weight I put on it, the harder it is for my wrist to move. There's more friction, more resistance. It's a better grip. Now, as the car shifts forward under braking, for example, there's more weight on the front tyres, and this means the front tyres grip the road harder, so there's more grip. Now, more grip at the front is very useful when you're turning around a corner because the car steers from the front, whereas more grip at the back of the car is useful when you're accelerating in a rear-wheel drive car. The power is going to the back of the car, so therefore if there's more grip in the back tyres, you're going to get better traction. Now this is why a lot of racing cars are rear-wheel drive, because it makes the best use of all four tyres. You're asking the front tyres to do the steering, and you're asking the rear tyres to do the accelerating, so as the weight shifts forwards and backwards through the corners, the balance is better in terms of which tyre gives you what level of grip. Now when you think of a front-wheel drive car, you're asking the front tyres to do an awful lot. They are steering the car, but they're also accelerating the car because the engine is powering the front wheels. So then when you accelerate, the weight of the car still shifts to the rear, but the rear tyres don't have the power. All of that's at the front of the car, which is now lifted off the ground. That means you've got less grip on the front tyres, but you need all the grip on the front tyres because the front tyres are doing the steering and the accelerating. That's what gives you a lot of understeer. Now this principle was further demonstrated in a video I made quite a few years ago now where I tried to drive a front-wheel drive Formula 1 car on Assetto Corsa, and you should definitely check that out if you want to learn more about the principles. Now of course it's not just about weight transferring from the front of the car to the back of the car, you've also got to think about cornering, weight shifting from the left-hand side to the right-hand side. So when you turn left into a corner, the weight is then forced over to the right of the car, and then obviously as you turn right into a corner, the weight is shifted over to the left-hand side wheels. If you're going through a series of corners where it goes left then right, a chicane for example, you're also going to experience an unbalancing of the car because you're quickly shifting the weight from rear to front and then to the right and then to the left, all of this happening in a quick succession. Lots of weight transfer is good for being able to move the car around, but it also quickly destabilizes the car and makes it difficult to control. So understanding how weight distribution works, being able to feel this difference, being able to control it somewhat to your advantage is key to becoming a fast racing driver. All of these principles won't make you fast straight out of the box, but you're definitely going to need to understand them and understand the feeling of them as we up the speed and you up your experience level going forward. Much better to build solid foundations and go from there. Just before we wrap things up for this first part, there is an exercise I want you to try before you jump into part 2 of this Ultimate Beginner's Guide series about racing lines. Stick to the same low-powered car that you were just driving if you were following along with us, but pick a brand new circuit, one that you're totally unfamiliar with, and ideally something reasonably short. I'm going to go with Vallelunga Club, which has about 10 or 11 corners, nice short circuit. Now to start with, to get you up to speed, I want you to drive around this circuit in exactly the same way as we did previously. So stick between the white lines that define the race circuit, go at a nice slow speed, and just familiarise yourself with the corners. Once you're comfortable and you know which way the circuit's going, you're beginning to get familiar with it, we're going to try and do something different. I want you to drive around the circuit, but instead of just driving in between the two white lines and keeping track of things, I want you essentially to aim for the curbs that are on the corners. Now this won't be the case on every circuit in every situation, but most of the time there should be a curb on the outside of the corner heading into it. There should be a curb on the inside of the corner through the middle of it, and then another curb on the outside again as you exit the corner. So this first corner, we don't really have any curbs, but you can start on the outside, head towards the inside where there's the Armco barrier there, and then back towards the outside of the corner as you exit. There's a curb there on the exit, let's run over that one. So here, we're going to start on the outside, we're going to want to touch the curb on the inside, in the middle of the corner, and then let the car drift out to the curb on the exit. I want you to make sure that you run the car over every curb in these situations. So outside, there's no curb there, but there's a curb on the inside, so we're going to run over that curb. Then we're going to run over the curb on the outside. Same again through here, curb on the outside, curb on the inside, and then it quickly switches, we've got another curb on the inside here, and then a curb on the outside. And just try and do a number of laps in a row where you're doing this exact technique. Get around hitting every single curb. This is going to be muscle memory that we're going to be building for what is the next video all about racing lines. So that's going to conclude part 1 of this series. A massive thank you once again to our sponsor trophi.ai. Go and check out the website, there's some fantastic training tools on there that you're definitely going to want to look into as you improve your sim racing and gain experience and knowledge. We'll be revisiting them later on in the series as well. And also, a big thank you to you guys for watching. We hope you found it useful. We hope you found it enjoyable. Please do leave us a like if that's the case. Subscribe so that you don't miss parts 2 or parts 3 or even more parts in the future. It's great to be back doing this series again. And until I see you next time, thank you so much for watching and have a great day.